The tasty treat in the Australian Grand Prix, the iconic Phillip Island circuit station with the fiercest and closest battles in history, and another showdown by the sea lies in store. It's time to race in MotoGP. So it's the 33rd Australian Grand Prix. The first two took place here at Phillip Island back in 1989 and 1990. Both races won by Aussie legend Wayne Gardner. It's fast, it's flowing and it's furious. 4.44 kilometres in length, 2.76 miles, 12 corners. A new all-time lap record set this morning by Jorge Martin on his way to a third pole in the last 5 Grand Prix. Overtaking hot spots aplenty. The most popular of them all in the classic race here 1 year ago. Marc Marquez on the inside of Marco Bezzecchi into the new Miller corner. Good afternoon then, and a warm welcome to one of MotoGP's most mesmerising and awe-inspiring venues. Those beautiful helicopter shots mean only one thing. It's great to be back at the majestic Phillip Island, the Australian Grand Prix, round 16 of 20 in this year's MotoGP World Championship. Coming your way up very, very shortly. 23 hours earlier than we originally planned, though, we go racing over the full 27 laps. Inclement weather forecast, in particular for howling strong gusts of winds around 80 to 90 kilometres an hour. I mean, there's been a reshuffle, a rejig of the race schedule. And rather than coming up very, very shortly will be the 13-lap Tissot sprint, well, you get double the fun and double the drama, because it's the full-length 27-lap Australian Grand Prix coming up at 3:10 local time. Of course, with the inclement weather forecast, weather permitting, we are still hoping for the Tissot sprint to get underway tomorrow afternoon, following the Moto3 and Moto2 Grand Prix. Of course, we're going to be keeping a very close eye on the weather forecast, close eyes on the skies as we get this spectacular Australian Air Force aerial display. But who is going to be flying high and riding high potentially at the top of the MotoGP World Championship? What a weekend it was coming to Australia. Last time out, the Indonesian Grand Prix in Mandalika. That certainly served up some thrills and spills, didn't it, with Jorge Martin, this time last week, a 4th successive Tissot sprint, meant for the very first time in his MotoGP career. He reached the summit, he reached the top of the MotoGP World Championship standings, but it was a short-lived affair. 24 hours later, when he was coasting 3 seconds clear of Aprilia's Maverick Vinales, when he crashed out and lost the World Championship lead, handing the initiative straight back to Pecco Bagnaia. The world champion comes into this afternoon's 27-lap Australian Grand Prix 18 points clear of Jorge Martin, and after a dramatic Saturday already here in Phillip Island, the pair of them lock horns. They go into this 27-lap showdown, starting on the front row of the grid. Matt Burton, Lewis Sotheby in the commentary box, Simon Crayfart down in pit lane. Jorge Martin this morning, well, as always, he was flying on that Prima Pramac Ducati. Half a second inside of his own all-time lap record on his way to pole position here in Australia 1 year ago. A 1:27.246. He was utterly dominant once again, the 25-year-old Spaniard. MotoGP pole position number 12 of his career, over 0.4 of a second ahead of Brad Binder, who had a great Friday. It's been a real strong weekend for the South African. His best ever MotoGP qualifying, just a 3rd front row start. Bagnaia completing the front row, having come out of what was a very tricky Q1 session, and like he did in Mandalika 7 days ago. Lewis, this just seems like it's set up perfectly for another titanic battle here in Australia. The Grand Prix 1 year ago, won by Alex Rins, the 2nd closest top 10 in Premier Class history. 2 title contenders on the front row, a record-breaking lap from Jorge Martin. Throw the aggression of Brad Binder into the mix as well. This one has got that extra special spice to it, it feels.
It always feels extra special when we come to Phillip Island. This is the kind of circuit that was just built for MotoGP at its finest. Last year's 27-lap Grand Prix was arguably the best of the season, and there is so much on the line and so many stories coming into this afternoon's Australian Grand Prix. Of course, the title battle going from the front row of the grid. Brad Binder, as you say, with absolutely nothing to lose from the middle of that front row on a KTM that has been a rocket ship so far this weekend. He will certainly have a say in the battle for victory and deciding who will lead the MotoGP World Championship into the Tissot Sprint, weather permitting, tomorrow. It changed hands twice last weekend. Will it change hands again over 27 laps this afternoon?
Great to see the Australian fans out in force, of course. They're pinning their hopes on potentially a first Australian Grand Prix winner since Casey Stoner did it 11 years ago on the factory Honda. Jack Miller then, he goes from 8th place, middle of the 3rd row. He has had really strong race pace. Looking good on that new carbon fibre chassis RC16. Great acceleration grip, really good agility through the high-speed sections, which is so key around this fast-flowing and furious 4.44 kilometre Phillip Island circuit. Miller, as you mentioned then, he's flanked either side by Marc Marquez and Maverick Vinales. The factory of Prilliman missing out, having looked so good throughout practice. Vinales going from the back of the 3rd row in 9th place. He's going to have his work cut out if he's to make it a 6th Grand Prix podium here in Phillip Island, but it's so hard to break away and escape here. It's not really stop and go at all, is it? Well, far from it being stop and go, this Phillip Island circuit, so it doesn't break up the pack, as we saw last year. 8/10 of a second covered the top 7. That group included this man, Marco Bezzecchi, so don't discount anybody really, Lewis, from those first four rows and potentially even deeper.
The other reason it's difficult to escape as well is because the riders are rather cautious of taking too much out of their rear tyre in the early stages. It's so important around a circuit such as this, with so much time spent on the side of the tyre at great stress around some of the high-speed corners we have here at Phillip Island, that you need to make sure you've got some rubber left when we get to the end of this 27-lap Grand Prix, and nobody's done race distance on those tyres at any stage in this weekend, so there will be a little bit of uncertainty as to what kind of tyre life they're going to have at the end of this 27-lap Grand Prix. So don't expect someone to necessarily go out too early and too fast from the start. If anyone's going to try it, you'd imagine it's going to be Jorge Martin, who has made a bit of a habit in recent rounds of going from the front and building up a bit of a gap. Of course, it was his attempts to do that and his attempts to extend that 3-second gap, which saw him crash out of the lead in Indonesia. He can seldom afford a repeat of that kind of mistake here this afternoon.
The omens bode well for Martin. His last 2 pole positions in Misano and in Motegi in Japan. He went on to complete the win double in both the Grand Prix and the Sprint, and he's been in sensational form so far this weekend. So has this man. He was the only rider to find a 1:27 on Friday. A 1:27.662 was still a fantastic lap time, but over 0.4 of a second back of poleman Jorge Martin. Only his 3rd front row start in 68 MotoGP races for the 28-year-old South African. You feel he's overdue a big result. He's not had a podium in his last 5 Grand Prix since his last front row start, coincidentally, when he capitalised on 3rd place on the grid in KTM's home round in Spielberg in the Stereo Mountains in Austria, 2nd in the Sprint and 2nd in the Grand Prix to Pecco Bagnaia. Keep a close eye on Binder, because he's going to be sharpening those elbows in these first laps, no question.
You're going to need a good eye to spot Fabio Quartararo on the grid, unfortunately. 16th for El Diablo, who's not really got a great record at Phillip Island, although not all together his fault. He has had some misfortune over the years too, and of course it was here where he lost the World Championship lead 1 year ago and he never got it back. Quartararo had a disastrous Friday. He was bolted by Augusto Fernandez in practice yesterday afternoon, although he did say that would have made no difference whatsoever to his fortunes. The bike just not turning, he says, and if you've not got a bike that turns around the fast and flowing corners of Phillip Island, you're on a hiding to nothing. He's promoted up a place on the grid because of that incident with Augusto Fernandez, who drops from what was 14th to 17th and will therefore start next to Fabio on the grid.
This won't lighten the 24-year-old's glum mood right now here in Australia. 4th time this year he's qualified outside of the top 15. He hasn't seen the checker flag in 2 previous visits here to Phillip Island in MotoGP. Now, one man who was always awesome around his home circuit is the 5 times world champion, the Australian legend Mick Doohan, who I'm delighted to say joins Simon Craig. Of course, they shared the 500cc podium here 25 years ago back in 1998. Always good to catch up with Mick. He joins Simon now down on the grid.
He is. We can hear the bikes fired up. Everyone's moving to the grid. We're off to the side, and Mick, what memories we've got. It's about to get noisy, buddy. They're coming out. What memories we've got of you riding here and winning so regularly, winning the championship here, standing on the podium, you know, I remember it clearly. Fans going nuts because fifth one. Tell us about some of those memories.
You're right, Simon. Well, you were chasing me down on that one in '98, so I was keeping a look over my shoulder to make sure you weren't going to pass me. But look, yeah, no, I won. I think that's the only time I won here. Actually, I'd won in Eastern Creek previously, but great memories here. It's a lot of fun to ride around here, and looking forward to a good race today, though.
Hey Mick, every year we see at Phillip Island the rear tyre gets such a hard time with this layout that people have to manage it, and it often makes for a real good race. I'm expecting the same. Have you heard anything different?
Look, I haven't been across it, to be fair, but look, it's business as usual, isn't it? And that's what's good about racing. You need to manage the weather, you need to manage the wind, you need to manage the situation, and you know, and unfortunately, it's got it on the pass. Motorsport is dangerous. It's just who takes the most risks. Some take too much and they crash. The other guy wins. But look, you know, maybe that's just too old school. But you're right, like, this place has always been tough on tyres. It's going to be no different today.
Mick, thank you for your time. Enjoy the race. Bye for now, buddy.
Cheers.
Thanks, Simon. Thanks to Mick Doohan 25 years ago. What an amazing day that was for the Aussie and the Kiwi fans. Of course, many of them have made the, was it 3 or 4 hour hop over from New Zealand to see this MotoGP action. So good around this circuit. Such an Aussie motorsport legend. They named Turn 1, of course, after Mick Doohan. The Doohan Corner, one of the big challenges, one of the many high-speed challenges around this Phillip Island circuit. The riders will encounter over 27 laps in about 20 minutes' time.
Got a great insight there into the relationship between the VR46 Academy bodies, as Marco Bezzecchi went past Pecco Bagnaia on the sighting lap and just gave him a little bit of a friendly wave as he did so. Bezzecchi will be delighted if he gets anywhere near Bagnaia in this Grand Prix this afternoon. Bezzecchi going from 10th on the grid. If he wants to keep his faint title hopes alive, he needs a big start to try and get himself on terms with that leading pack.
Marc Marquez, for the first time in his MotoGP career in Phillip Island, starts off the front row of the grid, but he's a proven race-winning pedigree around this Australian circuit. Tough going, though, from the head of the third row in 7th place. Let's get some pre-Australian Grand Prix thoughts from his team manager, Alberto Puig, who's with Simon.
He is. Alberto, fantastic job from Mark in qualifying, getting the toe that he needed, putting the lap together. I think 7th on the grid. But this race, I'm really curious what you think is possible for Mark. Often here, the rear tyre has to be managed and there's a bit of a group. What do you think is going to happen?
I don't know. I think Martin and Bagnaia are really fast. And if they pull away and then there's a group of riders, it will be easier for us. But if they don't pull away, it will be a little bit more complicated, I think. In any case, yeah, here you have to manage the tire. Everybody rider knows. So let's see. I mean, Mark is a tire specialist for managing the tire, but it will not be easy as usual.
Okay. Thank you, Alberto.
Thank you.
Yeah, it won't be easy, particularly given the pace and the form of the top three, the front row starters, Martin, Binder and Bagnaia. Last year's podium led by Alex Rins, who sadly has had to withdraw with the pain from that recovering right leg on the LCR Honda. Rins, Marquez, Bagnaia. It was the third closest podium in Premier Class history over a full race distance. So Aleix Espargaro, he leads the Aprilia Challenge. He wasn't getting any love from Australian fans. Jack Miller, he was 8th place. They had a little bit of an exchange this morning. Aleix Espargaro then, the 34-year-old Spaniard then, only one top 6 in 4 since his Catalunya win. Just 23 points collected in the last 4 rounds. That's that maximum points, all the 37 in Catalunya. DNFs in the last 3 sprints as well. I'll be hoping to rectify that in the sprint tomorrow. We're just going to get to the grid over, then we'll hear from Piero Tommaso from Michelin very, very shortly, but we're just going to run through the grid as Pecco Bagnaia comes to the front row on the factory Ducati. 18 points clear he is in this Australian Grand Prix. A front row led though by record-breaking Jorge Martin.
Let's take a look at the grid then. It's Martin from Binder and Bagnaia. Martin going to the grid on the soft rear tyre. Espargaro Espargaro, Zarco and Di Gianantonio on row 2. Zarco, like his teammate, with that soft rear tyre. Marc Marquez lines up 7th on the grid from Jack Miller and Maverick Vinales. Marco Bezzecchi and Paul Espargaro with the soft rear tyre on row 4, joined by Enea Bastianini. They line up 10th, 11th and 12th. Alex Marquez returns to action from 13th from Ralph Fernandez and Juan Mir. They all have the medium tyres on for this Australian Grand Prix as it stands at the moment. Fabio Quartararo, Augusto Fernandez and Luca Marini together on row 6. Miguel Oliveira, Frankie Morbidelli and Taka Nakagami complete your 21-rider grid, which does not include Alex Rins, unfortunately. He withdrew before practice 2 got underway this morning.
Pecco Bagnaia then trying to keep the full focus, keep his concentration ahead of what is a hugely important Phillip Island Grand Prix. Last year it was a huge stepping stone, that 3rd place, towards lifting Ducati's first World Championship since Aussie legend Casey Stoner did it 15 years earlier, back in 2007. The grid then starts to build. You can feel the atmosphere, you can feel the tension building. Marco Bezzecchi has work to do. 2 weeks out of fracturing that right collarbone while training at the Valentino Rossi Ranch on the Munivia 46 Ducati. 10th place on the grid for Bez. He lost 9th. He was on those first 3 rows when he got dropped down to 10th. Looks like there's some maybe late tyre changes going on there. It does seem, as I was walking to the commentary box, like the temperature did pick up as there was a bit of sunshine poking through the cloud. As we look at a man who is very much riding and fighting for his MotoGP future. Excellent 6th place on the grid for Fabio Di Gianantonio on the Gresini Racing Ducati. 6th place for Digia. 2nd time in the last 3 Grand Prix he's qualified in 6th spot. A great weekend for him so far.
Well, tyres are a big talking point coming into this Grand Prix. We'll hear from Piero Taramasso in just a moment, but first a very special ceremony before this Australian Grand Prix coming up. A special ceremony to a very special man, Richard Booth. 12 years as a MotoGP volunteer. The award for the most outstanding marshal of the event. Someone who went above and beyond through the weekend and contributed not just on track but also to the community of motorsport. The award named in honour of Barry Sheene. Congratulations to Richard Booth.
And of course, as always, we salute and thank the great work of all the volunteer marshals, not just here in Australia, but at every Grand Prix. Without their dedication, without their commitment and hard work, of course, this great World Championship would not be able to exist. Thanks for your patience, Simon. Thanks as well to the patience of Michelin Motorsport manager Piero Taramasso, who we can go and hear down now on the grid.
He is, and he's just having a bit of a conversation with another technician from Michelin. Piero, tell us your thoughts. This is a circuit that's always so hard, especially on the rear tyre. What's going to happen in the race? Who's going to choose what and why?
Yeah, it's very demanding track, especially on the left side, on the rear. We know we get a lot of temperature, then the tire started to build up temperature, overheat, then you lose grip, and then the bike started to move and move. You spin and you wear the tire. So it's very, very complicated one. This morning we had a chance to do some few laps in the cooler condition because all the results from yesterday, you know, they are a little bit useful because yesterday we ran at 50 degrees on the track. Now it's only 33, 34. But so far it looks like the majority of the rider, they choose the front hard because of the stability and the rear medium. Also same thing, stability and consistency. But you will see maybe 2-3 riders, they will try the soft on the rear because yeah, the initial grip is is much more, you know, is more grippy for the first 5 or 7 laps. So they might try that and then try to manage the tire to the end of the race.
Thank you, Piero.
Thanks, Simon. Thanks to Piero Taramasso. You can just see there off into the distance. It is getting pretty cloud. Look at Gino Borsoi from Prima Ducati as he glares over the nearby Bass Strait. There's our colleague Jack Appleyard actually just grabbing a word with Gino. It's part of the live build-up on our social media platforms here. Not too far away from hearing, of course, one of the best national anthems in the world, the Advance Australia Fair. The birds are flying high. We're going to be building up, continuing this countdown to this Australian Grand Prix. We remind you, if you're joining us for the very first time this weekend, this is not the Tissot Sprint coming up. This is the full 27-lap Australian Grand Prix with some unpredictable and inclement weather forecast for tomorrow. There's been a heavy revision to the race schedule. Now then, KTM, they must have huge hopes, huge expectations of being in the fight for this Grand Prix victory in Phillip Island, particularly with Brad Binder looking so good in second place. His third front row starting MotoGP. And don't discount Jack Miller, the home crowd hero, going from 8th spot. Let's get some thoughts from their team manager, Francesco Guidotti. Who's this, Simon?
He is. Francesco, we all remember clearly how KTM struggled until this weekend to really do impressive qualifying laps, you know, one-off laps. You've always had the pace, but it was the qualifying end to be fastest and second fastest yesterday, and only Jorge Martin going faster today in qualifying. Can this new strength also be used in the long race?
I hope so. I mean, we will try to follow the trend of yesterday and today morning. So yeah, long distance, 27 laps will be a lot, but it will be for everyone. So let's see. We will play our cards, and we know that Brad is fully committed on the race. He is focused on at least a top 3, I would say.
Jack had a bit of bad luck in qualifying. Is it possible to pass for him and in the front group?
Yeah, it's the other side of the medal. I mean, it's a long race. You can have time to recover. He's in third row. It's not too far away. And he suffered a little bit the wind on turn 3 and turn 6. His main complaint of today. Yesterday was pretty good.
Thank you and best of luck.
Thank you.
Thanks, Simon. Thanks to Francesco Guidotti. Yeah, you do feel that if Brad Binder doesn't finish on the podium today, then he'll be bitterly disappointed. He could have podiumed this afternoon, making the most successful South African in Premier Class history in terms of podiums. He's tied at the moment with Paddy Driver. That's a great opportunity for Binder to take that accolade here this afternoon. 68th Grand Prix appearance in MotoGP, and just his third front row. Hard to believe, isn't it, really? Never really been a strong qualifier. He is certainly a strong racer, though, isn't he? Now then, Pecco Bagnaia defending an 18-point lead in the MotoGP World Championship. Big 27 laps coming the way for the Ducati star. Let's get some pre-race thoughts from the boss, Davide Tardozzi. Who's with Simon?
Yes, Davide, I always look forward to your analysis of the race. Tell us what you think's going to happen today.
Yeah, here it will be a matter of play in the right way in the beginning of the race with the rear tire, mainly turn 11, 12. I don't know if somebody will choose the soft because it's much faster, but in the end, I guess that the tire wear will be very, very, very tough to manage. 27 laps here in Phillip Island are very demanding, so we'll see what's going to happen, because I'm sure that Jorge Martin will try immediately to pull away. Then we'll see who will be in his draft.
Davide, as always, thank you and best of luck.
Thank you.
Well, we've talked about Australian legends in terms of riders here this weekend. Casey Stoner, Wayne Gardner and Mick Doohan all have parts of this 4.4 kilometre Phillip Island circuit named after them. There is Wayne Gardner, actually right on cue, Australia's first ever Premier Class World Champion in 1987. And a man who behind the scenes did so much sterling work, particularly as crew chief to Doohan and crew chief to Valentino Rossi. Jerry Burgess there, who's always a keen observer watching trackside here at this Australian Grand Prix. So the waves break on the nearby beaches. Jorge Martin was riding the crest of a wave, wasn't he? Last weekend in Mandalika after that 4th consecutive sprint win, but then crashing out of that 3-second lead in the Grand Prix. That's why he's trying to hunt down. He's the hunter again, isn't he? 18 points adrift of Bagnaia as we look at one of several thousand Thriller Miller fans who made the annual pilgrimage to his home Grand Prix here in Australia. The big honour and accolade last year of Turn 4 being named after Jack. I know that Jack's family, friends, as always, they are camped at that 4th corner ready to see what Jack can do from the middle of that third row. He has won before for Red Bull and KTM on home turf. He won that classic 2014 Moto3 battle, but there's not been an Australian winner in the Premier class here at Phillip Island since Stoner did it on the Repsol Honda back in 2012.
And I asked him yesterday, is this your best opportunity, you think, to win at home now that you're on the KTM, which clearly is working superbly around this Phillip Island circuit? And his answer was, yes, it is. So Jack Miller certainly feels he's in with a shout. What didn't help him this morning was qualifying on the third row of the grid, and he certainly wasn't too happy with Aleix Espargaro when that qualifying session came to a close. But a good start on that factory KTM, and if you can get away with the leading group, which are expecting to be bigger than normal here in Phillip Island, and Miller will certainly be in with a shout of the podium.
Well, Ducati, the factory Ducati team, know exactly what plan A will be for Jorge Martin. It's going to be trying to escape at the front of this Grand Prix. We'll pause then now for the Australian national anthem.
Is very much a family sport. From the teams and organisers and fans, fittingly to sing the national anthem today is the daughter of our engineering events team. Would you please stand for the national anthem and welcome to the microphone, Chloe Walton.
Wow, what an amazing rendition of Advance Australia Fair from Chloe Walton. Superb way to build up towards this 27-lap Australian Grand Prix. The Australian Air Force aerial display team putting on a spectacular pre-race show as well. What's going through the minds of Jack Miller in his big home Grand Prix? Aprilia then, their top qualifier in fourth place was Aleix Espargaro. Maverick Vinales, already a 5 times podium finisher previously here in Phillip Island in his Grand Prix career. He starts from 9th. Let's get some pre-race thoughts from their boss, Paolo Bonora, who joined Simon.
Yes, Paolo, like Silverstone, like Assen, I really thought Phillip Island was going to be a strong one for Aprilia, but it doesn't seem to be going as easy as I thought it would. More importantly, what do you think and what do you hope for the race?
Yeah, you're right, Simon. We struggled since yesterday in the last part of the circuit, more than last year, for sure. So we tried to do something during the FP1, the practice, and this morning FP3. We hope to find something. By the way, starting from the 4th position with Aleix is a good starting point. Despite Maverick have to do something much more better, because starting from that position will be difficult for sure. But we look forward to have a good race pace and a good result.
I hope you found the key for the race, and best of luck, Paolo.
Thanks to all.
Yeah, thanks, Simon. Thanks to Paolo Bonora. Then it's today the day that Maverick Vinales, having to come from the back of that third row, can finally end his victory drought. This is his 50th Grand Prix since his last win way back at the start of 2021 in Qatar. He's going for back-to-back podiums for the first time since the first 2 Grand Prix of 2020 in the Jerez double-header in our delayed start after the COVID-19 pandemic. But it's all eyes, isn't it, on this front row. Martin versus Bagnaia, with Binder thrown into the mix as well. Best qualifying result in the Premier Class, as we can see. What about the Michelin tyre choice, Lewis? Because that is always so key around 27 tyre finishing laps here in Phillip Island. One of only 3 tracks, Phillip Island, where the entire location is asymmetric, with Sachsenring and Valencia. So what have the riders gone for?
Well, it's quite an even split amongst the front tyres between the medium and the hard. All riders on the front row of the grid have gone for the hard front tyre. The interesting news is on the rear tyre. We did see a preview of it when we brought you the grid around 10 minutes ago, but we can confirm to you now from Michelin, all riders have gone for the medium rear tyre, with 3 exceptions. They are Pol Espargaro, Marco Bezzecchi and the poleman Jorge Martin, who have gone for the soft rear tyre.
Well, that's clear indication, isn't it, of what Ducati predicted, what Davide Tardozzi told Simon a few minutes ago. Jorge Martin's going to try and rely on his trademark rocket ship starts, just like the one he made from 6th place in Mandalika last weekend. And with that soft rear tyre, he is going to try and get his head down and bolt. He was 3 seconds clear, we remind you, 6 days ago in Mandalika, when it all went horribly wrong. Such a massive mistake. He was quick to rectify that, though. A statement performance in yesterday morning's FP1. Just a reminder to the field, he says he's still clearly the fastest rider in this MotoGP World Championship chase. It's almost the brains versus the brawn, isn't it? Martin, you know, he's going to go gung-ho, but the sort of, perhaps the more thinking, analytical rider will be Pecco Bagnaia, going from 3rd. Lewis, have we got some
quick late
revisions
changes to the tyre selection sheet? One of the 3 riders who'd gone for the soft rear tyre has now switched. That's Marco Bezzecchi. He's now gone across to the medium rear tyre. Martin and Pol Espargaro are still on the soft rear tyre, with only 2 riders on the medium front, everyone else on the hard.
So Jorge Martin, he's taken a bit of a gamble here, hasn't he? I guess he'll feel that he's got to do it to try and hunt down this man. Bagnaia at the top of the championship. So Bagnaia at the back of that front row. It's already been a strong Saturday for him, because he had work to do this morning when he found himself stuck in Q1, having been 11th in both sessions yesterday. There is Brad Binder then. He's going to get the gloves on, and soon it'll be gloves off here in Australia, as we find out who is going to take the spoils in this 27-lap Grand Prix of Australia. 23 hours earlier than what we anticipated. Weather permitting, we're still hoping to get the Tissot sprint running tomorrow. But that's all in the future. 5 minutes. Start the clock, start the countdown then to what you feel is going to be a decisive race. Can Jorge Martin bounce back immediately from that crash out of the lead in Mandalika? Can Pecco Bagnaia keep stamping on him in that 2nd place? Can he extend that 18-point lead in the standings? Bagnaia then goes from the front row of the grid for the 13th time in 16 Grand Prix so far in 2023. Only the 3rd front row start of his MotoGP career for South African Brad Binder. But he's on pole. The last 2 occasions Jorge Martin has fired the Prima Ducati away from the front of the grid. He has done the victory double in Misano in Bagnaia's backyard, and in Motegi a couple of weeks ago. He's back in the position of the hunter. Are we going to see the Martinator magic here in Australia?